Hello, 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 everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Fiberstrike 95, and welcome back to our annual Friday series of our All Countries trip. Today is part 5. That's right, everyone. We're back in this series once again, and today we're here in St. Martin, of course. We're starting here in St. Martin, and today we're going to be visiting the island nation of Antigua and Barbuda today. This is compared to some of the other countries, this is one of the more recent ones. Haven't been founded all the way back as a country gained its independence in 1981. But Antigua does have some really interesting history that I think we're definitely going to. So before we get started, I do want to say hello to everyone here. My bots, my moderator, Super Talkphone, good to see you. And some of the users lurking in chat, good to have all you guys here back too. Let's go ahead and cover our flight plan for today. Simple one today. We're here at Princess Juliana Airport. Tango November Charlie Mike. So our first plane is going to go through. We'll be flying through downtown Phillipsburg. Start at Phillipsburg here. Fly our way across St. Martin. Then from there we'll head up east. We'll fly into the place of St. Bartholomew Island. Very well famous for the famous airport that's here. We'll fly over St. Bart. Then we'll make our way 57 nautical miles to our first stop here at Conneryton Airport, right over here. Tango Alpha Papa Hotel is Conneryton Airport in Barbuda. Then from there, then we're going to go visit the rest of Barbuda, and then we'll fly around the island of Antigua. We'll do a fly around the entire island, of course. We'll be flying around the area. And we'll fly around all across the island, Devil's Bridge, and of course the UNESCO World Heritage Site, the English Harbor, and Nelson's Dockyard, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And we'll make our way eventually to the capital of Antigua and Barbuda, St. John's, and we'll make a landing here at BC Bird International Airport. That would be our flight today. Simple flight plan, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to take the Cabri gyrocopter today. I thought this would be nice to take this plane. Again, this aircraft doesn't get a lot of usage very much. It's pretty slow, so normally there isn't a lot of usage for this, but I think today would be a good time to get this plane up and going. So let's go ahead and get this aircraft started. I've already maxed fuel. Should be ready up and going. Yep, nice. So that is our engine started. So let's look at we're in Phillipsburg. This is the main town and capital of St. Martin, part of the Netherlands. This is the Dutch half of the Netherlands, by the way. But one really neat thing about St. Martin, of course, Phillipsburg, is located in the south coast, the main port of entry to this island. Tourism is the main activity here. As thanks to its lodgings and cultural activities, the town faces threats and devastation from hurricanes striking the coast as of 2017. Phillipsburg has had around 1,894 inhabitants here in Phillipsburg. Tourism is a big part of town. There's a lot of really cool things in this city. Of course, one of the most famous attractions here is, of course, our very own Princess Juliana. Now, Princess Juliana is the main airport for this island, of course, of St. Martin. And of course, when you guys think St. Martin, there's one thing you guys all know St. Martin is world famous for. It's low altitude flyover landing approaches. If you ever visit Maho Beach, you can actually see the planes land near it. It's very popular. It's one of the best plane spotting locations in the world. People love to take pictures of Princess Juliana. Really cool airport. It has destinations all across North America, in the Caribbean, but mainly North American destination, the Caribbean, and a handful of European places like Paris, such as Paris and London. Paris, London, and Amsterdam, for example. Very popular destinations for St. Martin. Bus. Why is there a bus in the taxiway? Watch where you going. Watch where you going. So we'll be taxiing to runway 10. We'll get a departure out of this airport. Thankfully, we don't need to have high altitude today. We're in the Caribbean. And this flight in particular doesn't really have much elevation, so we're gonna go out here, taxi, airport. Really no flat with this, of course. So this is Princess Juliana. This is by the way, this is handcrafted in the simulator. And of course, we're at the world famous Maho Beach. I've been to this beach in real life, guys, by the way. I've been in St. Martin in real life at Maho Beach. Really cool. Really cool area. I got to watch several planes land here in St. Martin. A couple of cruise ships, though. St. Martin's very popular with cruise ships, by the way. A lot of cruise ships way. Like I said, plus I wanted to fly some direct chopper, but I don't want to actually fly helis. I'm not really good with a helicopter. Like I said, just like last time, unfortunately, I checked the music thing, and some reason I can't really play any music. For some reason, the music I've been using can't be played on YouTube, on the YouTube music. As well. So we're going to be cruising. So we're going to be cruising around 8 knots. This here is going to be Phillipsburg. So St. Martin, beautiful island. Lots of really cool stuff here. So if you don't know about St. Martin, of course, St. Martin is split between the upper northern parts of the lower part is the Dutch part of the island, owned by the Dutch. The northern part is a constituent of France. So yes, it's one of the only few islands divided by two different nations here in. In fact, it's only one of a handful of divided islands divided by two different nations. In fact, pretty cool stuff here for St. Martin. Pretty cool area. Of course. Now, part of my research, of course, if you want to look for excursions here on the island, Some of the very popular ones include the Best St. Martin, which will allow you to get some time to do some flight scene stuff. It sees some of the planes land. There's a scenic drive you can do. They got a Rockland Estate and Sky Explorer. You can go to the top of the hills overlooking St. Martin. They got culinary stuff. They got Orient Beach, very popular for a lot of adults. Love going to the beach. Buggy safari, lagoon cruise, catamaran sailing, lagoon kayaking, and more are very popular here. Right here is Phillipsburg. To our left is the capital of St. Martin, Phillipsburg. This here is Phillipsburg, St. Martin. We're going to go ahead this way. We're going to head over to St. Bart's. So we're going to go ahead and cover a bit about Antigua and Barbuda. These are the country we'll be covering on today's trip. So this is Antigua and Barbuda. If you guys don't know, this sovereign island country, archipelago country in the Caribbean, consists of two main islands, Antigua and Barbuda, and several other small islands. Its total land area is about 440 square kilometers, making it one of the smallest countries here in the Caribbean. It's mostly flat, with the highest point being the Sherkley Mountains in Antigua. In the highlands of Barbuda are the two highest points on the island. Of course, its capital and most populated city is St. John's. And most of the country resides in the corridor between St. John's and English Harbor. Antigua and Barbuda have been around for a lot of years, indigenous people, but of course, most European settlement came during the Europeans. Mainly, it was colonized in 1632 by Edward Warren. It became independent in 1981. It's one of the only countries in the Caribbean, by the way, to maintain its own air force. Other Caribbean countries rely on other nations to provide security. The United States of America. But Antigua actually has its own air force. And it has a mostly service-based economy. Has significant influence in the former Leeward Islands, having the largest economy and population in the former colony. Though, that being said, there is still some human rights and political polarization still here. So, definitely pretty interesting as well to learn more. So the history of Antigua and Barbuda, first settled by the Ice Age, by the Archaic Age indigenous hunter-gatherers called the Saboni peoples. And they were dated back to 3100 BC. They were succeeded by the Ceramic Age pre-Columbian Arawak-speaking Solidoid people, who migrated from the Orinoco River, which is now in South America, and they introduced agriculture, raising, among other crops, including the famous Antigua black pineapple, which is actually in the country's flag, by the way. Is in the country's flag. They also did corn, sweet potatoes, chilies, guava, tobacco, and cotton. And then later, the Carib peoples settled onto the islands. Well, of course, the first European to sight the islands was Christopher Columbus. A year after his sailing and his landing, he returned back in 1493 to sight the islands. However, funnily enough, the Spanish didn't colonize the island initially, until after a combination of European and African disease, malnutrition, and slavery extirpated the local population, whereas being, of course, smallpox. But this wasn't settled by the Spanish, but rather the English were the ones who settled it. In 1632, when it was settled in Antigua, and then the island of Barbuda was then later settled by Christopher Codrington in 1885. And a lot of this area was grown by tobacco and sugar. And a lot of that was grown by the slaves from West Africa, a lot of this. And they greatly outnumbered the European settlers at this point. Of course, the English maintained control of the islands, and they repelled various French attacks, including one in 1606. The brutal conditions brought by the slaves led to revolts in 1701 and 1729, and then a planned revolt in 1736, which was last led by Prince Claus, who was enslaved in Antigua. Though Australia was discovered before it began, and the ringleaders of the revolt were executed. Of course, 100 years later, slavery was then abolished in the British Empire in 1833, which affected the economy of Antigua, and it was further exacerbated by natural disasters, including an earthquake in 1843 and a hurricane in 1847, which devastated much of the local agrarian-based economies. Of course, then later on, Antigua was part of the Leeward Islands colony, and it became part of the short-lived West Indies Federation from 1958 to 1962. And then it became essentially an associated state of the UK with full autonomy in 1967. Of course, the 70s were mainly controlled by independence movements between the rivalry very bird of the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party and the Progressive Labour Union of George Walter. Eventually, in 1981, Antigua gained full independence on November 8th, 1981, as Antigua and Barbuda. The first 2 decades of Antigua's independence were dominated politically by the Byrd family and the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party, with Barry Byrd ruling from 1981 to 1994, followed by his son from 1994 to 2004. Though it did provide a lot of political stability and boost tourism, the Byrd governments were also accused of corruption, cronyism, and financial malfeasance. Of course, their dominance ended in politics in 2004, which was won by Winston Baldwin Spencer's United Progressive Party. And Winston Baldwin Spencer was the prime minister from 2004 to 2014. However, they lost in 2014 with the Labour Party getting back to power under Gaston Brown. And he is still the prime minister of Antigua to its days. One very good news about Antigua was in 2016, Nelson's Dockyard, which we need to visit, is now designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Of course, tragically in 2017, most of Barbuda was completely devastated by Hurricane Irma in 2017, which winds about 185 miles struck the islands and damaged and destroyed 95% of its buildings and infrastructure, leading it at the time to be barely habitable, according to the Prime Minister. In fact, to rebuild this island took nearly $100 million to rebuild the area. So that is the history of Antigua. Hey, We Fly Daily, good to see you. I'm doing quite well, my dude. Definitely check out We Fly Daily's channel. Great friend of the community and such. So I hope you're all doing well here. So we're actually heading to Antigua and Barbuda today. We Fly Daily. I've actually been to the island myself and Antigua myself. Really beautiful place. It was actually one of the highlights of my trip to there. So, simple stuff here. So, guys, we're going to be approaching the island of St. Bart's here. St. Bart's. Now, if you guys aren't aware about St. Bartholomew, St. Bartholomew, of course, it's actually part of France. It's a French overseas territory. It is about full land size of this area is 25 square kilometers. Its capital largest is Gustava. Believe it or not, it was actually established in 1648 by the French. But at one point, guess who owned this island? The Swedes actually bought this place back in the 1780s. Actually purchased the island of St. Bartholomew. The French actually traded it to the Swedes in exchange for trading privileges. And in fact, that's how Gustava got its name, from the Swedish king. And the Swedes held on to this island all the way. And the Swedes held this island all the way to 1878, where it was given to the French. So, pretty cool stuff, but this is a very wealthy island. Compared to many other islands, this is very high standard of living compared to many other islands here in the Caribbean. This is very high standard of living. High-end villas, luxury real estate, and more. St. Bart's, absolutely beautiful little island here in St. Bartholomew. Cool stuff here in St. Bart's. Really cool stuff. So down over here in front of us, of course, is this is the very famous airport, St. Bartholomew Island Airport, one of the most tricky airports to ever land in the world. It is a very extreme airport, one of the most dangerous in the world, believe it. First, you only have a 2,100-foot runway. Secondly, it's very close to proximity traffic, and of course, unique landing conditions here. Because of the mountain scenery, you have to land over the hill and then go into a steep bit of approach and land there. It's the base of a gentle slope, so planes often depart points fly over the heads of sunbathers, while the people landing the aircraft is above traffic. Very tough to land there. In fact, the largest plane that ever landed this airport operated here was a DH-7, was a Dash 7. Largest airport ever operated here, right? Which is pretty cool to bring it up. This is St. Bart's. Pretty cool stuff. We're going to head over to Antigua and Barbuda. We're going to be heading to the right. That one is going to be for 57 nautical miles. So I wanted to ask you guys, I hope you guys are having plans for this weekend, of course. I didn't have a stream Friday last Sunday because, well, I had an event going on. Also, next Friday, by the way, is going to be Angola. I forgot to put that on the list, but we're going to be going to Angola next Friday. So that should be exciting, of course, for our next part of the all-country series is Angola. Forgot to put it on the list, but yeah. It was technically supposed to be going before this, but I just realized it now that I forgot to put it on the list. Silly me. On Sunday, we'll be back Sunday for our National Park series. We'll be covering Yosemite National Park, one of the absolute gems of America's, one of its greatest national parks. Yosemite, famous for its amazing stonework, its valley, its world famous Yosemite Valley, waterfalls, rock domes, beautiful landscapes. Yosemite's got it all, and we're going to be taking some of the bushcraft and do some fun flying and landing here at Yosemite National Park. So it should be a lot of fun. So it should be a bunch of fun. So that is going to be our streaming plans. I have not done the Grand Canyon. In fact, if you want me to go my highlight of the Grand Canyon, in the list of our national parks, the Grand Canyon is actually between Acadia and Zion. I'm doing it by dates of establishment, so Grand Canyon's going to be in Acadia and Zion. I'm going to do the national parks based on the order of their establishment. Yosemite is our next national park. The next national park after this one, by the way, Yosemite, is going to be Mount Rainier in Washington. Washington, we'll be going from Fort Hood. We're going to head our way up north of Fort Hood. We're going to go north from there, visit St. Helens, Mount Baker. We're going to go through Mount Baker and all that. We'll go through Mount Adams, Mount St. Helens, and of course Mount Rainier. We're going to do some flying around Mount Rainier. We're going to be landing some really cool sites, some waterfalls and all that stuff. And of course, we might even get to go high enough. We're going to go to the top of Mount Rainier, which is going to be a lot of fun visiting the summit of Rainier. We might get a potentially good view of Seattle. Be very nice next week. So I hope you guys have good plans this weekend, of course. I know we got a lot of stuff going on this week. Of course, I do want to talk some sports stuff. For the NFL, for my Colts, they're going to be taking on the Titans Sunday. I can't even believe the Colts are 2-0 this year with Daniel Jones at quarterback. I have no idea how in the freaking heck that even happened. And the ending of the last game was a massive surprise. But yes, the Colts are doing well to start the year, and they're going to take on the Titans, who are not very good at all. Who knows? There's a good chance the Colts go 3-0 to start the season, which I can't believe the Colts are even going to go 3-0. How on earth is that even possible? It shouldn't even happen. How? How the Colts going to be 3-0? For my dear Colts. I'm not complaining, but I'm just not expecting this year to be like what. For the Premier League this year for Everton, I'm watching the Toffees, of course. Tomorrow morning at 7:30, I'm gonna have to wake up early Sunday, tomorrow morning, because Everton are playing Liverpool in the Merseyside Derby. It's gonna be Merseyside again. Everton, Liverpool, they've been playing each other for they're the most played top flight derby in England. They've been first met in 1894. They played 240 meetings between clubs. Unfortunately for Everton, Liverpool have now dominated this series in recent memory. The last time Everton got a win against Liverpool, the most recent winning of the derby, was back in 2024, which costed Liverpool the league, practically. But yeah, should be a good game. Liverpool are doing very well this year. There's a reason they're top of the league, of course. They're the only team that has gotten the full 12 points. And Everton are fourth. They're actually sixth in the league. So who knows? A win here could finally get the Toffees a bit of breathing. I'm also checking out RCD Espanyol. For the Pericos of La Liga. They got a massive game tomorrow morning as well against Real Madrid, the best team in the league, against the Mariners. Massive matchup. Espanyol is off to its best start in decades. And of course, in fact, Espanyol has not beaten Real Madrid in a league game in decades. This is a pretty huge game against Real Madrid. I'm just praying that they get a good results, because I don't want to see them lose to Real Madrid. But if they somehow get a win, this would be an unbelievable story. But I don't think they're going to go. I'm praying for a draw. Get a draw, and I would be happy with that. And finally, Eintracht Frankfurt, by the way. I just saw the Champions League matchup last night. I was watching Frankfurt in the Champions League. They destroyed the Turkish side Galatasaray. 5-1. They completely decimated them. Which was absolutely epic. They destroyed them in the Champions League. It was epic. Of course, their next game will be against Union Berlin on Sunday morning. It was right before I streamed too, so I watched just a little bit of it. Which should be a pretty good game for Frankfurt. They're going to do pretty well here. Of course, for baseball leagues, I think the baseball season's about to end, of course. About the end of the season for my hometown Reds. They still have a shot at the wild card. For one of the wild card spots, I know the Brewers and Cubs clinched their playoff spots. The Phillies have clinched their division. They definitely won the division pretty convincing. Yes, the Cubs got back to the playoffs for the first time since 2020. See the Cubbies get there, they'll The Reds, I'm hoping the Reds sneak through in the playoffs. Dodgers are probably going to clinch the division, not too much. The Padres are only 3 back. So basically, the whole playoff thing is going to finally come into the standings. So that should be very interesting, of course. So in terms of our wild card standings, for the National League, it's expected that the Mets take the last wild card spot. The Reds are only just 2. I'm just hoping the Reds get back to the playoffs. Haven't been in the playoffs in a while, so good to have them back in the postseason. It's going to be a tough road, not impossible. Pretty interesting stuff going on. So that'll be covering sports for now. I think that's going to cover sports, obviously. Only a couple of weeks left in the schedule. But yeah, baseball season definitely is going to be reaching its end pretty soon. For this. Pretty big stuff. So let's cover the next thing about Antigua and Barbuda, of course. I want to cover a bit about its geography. So geographically, Antigua and Barbuda is formed by limestone formations. Actually had the most impact on the topography of both of the main islands, which are relatively low-lying islands. The highest point on the entire country is Boggy Peak, which rises up to 402 meters, or 1,319 feet above sea level. Is the highest point on the entire island, of course. Now, both islands have very irregularly shaped coastlines. They're dotted with beaches all over, lagoons, and natural harbors. There are recent shoals that surround the island on all sides, and due to the low amount of rainfall, there are not many streams. As a result, you can't really find a lot of fresh groundwater found. There's also a small inhabited island just 25 miles southwest, Redonda, quite rocky. And the forest cover on both islands is around 18%. So, not too much forest cover. Of course, in terms of climate, rainfall averages mainly around 39 inches. The amount varying between seasons. Generally, the wettest period September to November. And they experience low humidity and recurrent droughts. Temperatures vary between 80 around average around 80 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter, in summer autumn around 86. Of course, like many islands in the Caribbean, hurricanes are very common here, including the hurricane that damaged much of Barbuda, Hurricane Irma, as a result. So yes, do be careful about the climate here, our hurricane risk, just like a lot of the Caribbean. So that's why if it's hurricane season, you do not sail in the Caribbean. That's a tip that I've learned very painfully when we did that about 2 Octobers ago. We try to go to Antigua Barbuda during the hurricane season. Oh, that's a bad idea. Don't do that. That's a lesson I learned very, very well. So, we're doing pretty good. We're just around 100 nautical miles away from our final stop here. We're doing pretty good. So if you look to our right, the island. This is St. Kitts. St. Kitts is on our right, by the way. Island of St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, of course, we'll be visiting that country later in the journey. St. Kitts and Nevis. We'll be visiting St. Kitts and Nevis on the journey later on. Here's we'll visit St. We'll be seeing those two plenty within the course of the series. Like I said, this series is going to take a little while. Yeah, tsunami's absolutely terrible. I feel for all the people. And you know what country probably suffers a lot of tsunamis and stuff? We know Japan suffers from it, but I think some of the worst the freaking Philippines. The Philippines are probably the worst of all of it. They get 19 typhoons a year. Typhoons are notorious in the Philippines. They're absolutely I mean, there's some absolutely terrible ones in history. By daily. Of course, you all probably know most famously the 2004 tsunami, Indian Ocean tsunami, which was 9.2, 9.3, and the Richter scale, struck near the coast of northern Sumatra, and it completely devastated entire communities, killing an estimated over 200,000 people in 14 different countries. It is the deadliest tsunami in history, and if not one of the most deadliest natural disasters ever. It was absolutely terrifying. Nothing was worse than that. Mm. So, so we're going to be heading to Antigua and Barbuda, of course. Heading to Barbuda first, technically north of the island as well. Mm. Basically, we're going to be going next is, of course, the government of Antigua and Barbuda. Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. The treble wave just kept traveling and traveling and traveling. Yeah, I see that now. Like, it started in Asia. Tsunami just went further and further. I believe the tsunami even went as far as Somalia, which was 3,100 nautical miles west of the tsunami. If not South Africa and other places too. Crazy. But basically, we're going back to our government stuff, of course. Um, so the government of Antigua and Barbuda is a unitary parliamentary democracy. It's under a constitutional monarchy, as Antigua is actually part of the Commonwealth of States. The executive branch has two leaders: the Governor General, who is currently Rodney Williams. He exercises the function of the monarch of Antigua and Barbuda, which is King Charles III, whose executive powers vested in. While the Prime Minister, who is currently Gaston Brown, is the head of government and appointed by the Governor General. And the Prime Minister must be a member of the House of Representatives and must be the member of the House who is most likely to support of the majority. Now, the legislative power in Barbuda is vested in Parliament, which consists of the monarch, Senate, and the House of Representatives. The Senate is composed of 17 different members appointed by the Governor General. 10 of them are appointed by the advice of the Prime Minister. Um, 4 of them are appointed by the leader of the opposition, known as the opposition senators, and 1 on the advice of the council. Of course, the judiciary is composed of the Magistrates Court, Supreme Courts, which includes the High Court and Court of Appeal, and the Judiciary Committee of the Privy Council, the final court in the country. But of course, much of the politics here in Ireland are dominated by the center-right Antigua Barbuda Labour Party and the left-wing United Progressive Party. The two main foreign parties involved. Yes, it was on Christmas too. That was also haunting as well for that part as well. Right ahead of us, of course, we see Barbuda ahead. Not too far away. We're doing pretty good. 81 knots is where we're flying speed right now. 81 knots. We're doing very, very well here. How's our fuel situation? 50%. Checking our fuel situation. We're doing pretty good. We're doing quite good, of course. Also, one more thing as well. My local team, too, Louisville City. I forgot to do one last thing. Louisville City Football Club, baby. Blue City, the hottest ticket in town. Louisville City still ahead with 57 points. We just clinched the playoff spot. Pretty much clinched it. Absolutely insane season. Only one loss this. On Saturday night, of course, we'll be taking on We're gonna host Las Vegas Lights. So we're gonna watch Louisville City take on Las Vegas Lights. Should be fun. Who, by the way, this is part of the USL, not the MLS second division. Las Vegas Lights are one of the worst teams in the. Should be a pretty good. Should be an easy win for Louisville City. It's been about college football, of course. I forgot to cover college football for a bit, but some absolutely pretty big surprises last week. Vanderbilt destroyed South Carolina, and they destroyed them. Wasn't even fair. Yes, freaking Vanderbilt are doing well. They're 3-0. Who the heck expected Vanderbilt to do good? No one did. LSU gets a big win last week. Iowa State's doing well. Texas Tech. Georgia had a very shocking ending, though. And Georgia Tech beat Clemson. So, but yeah, some of the big top 25 games this week. Of course, on Saturday we had the big Big 12 matchup. Texas, the biggest game of the Big 12 schedule. Oregon State are playing again for their Civil War matchup. Could this be the last time in a while? Auburn, Oklahoma, big SEC matchup. And yes, it's still taking me some bit of time to get used to Oklahoma in the SEC. That's going to take me a bit of while to still get used to it. But I think the biggest game is Indiana and Illinois. Yes, Indiana, Illinois, the biggest game of the week. But yeah, Indiana's actually not good at football. And of course, Illinois is in the top 10 this year. Absolute game of course. And of course, Florida, Miami is always pretty. As for my Louisville Cardinals, University of Louisville Cards, they're going to take on Bowling Green, which should be a pretty easy win for the Cards. I get 3-0 this week. But I mean, Louisville's schedule is pretty favorable this year, so who knows? They could potentially make it pretty far. Oh, sorry for U of L football. College basketball should be coming up pretty soon. I don't think we have to wait too far for U of L basketball. For U of L, of course, I know University of Louisville had a huge bounce back last year. This schedule should be absolutely insane. Next year's basketball schedule, this season basketball schedule, insane for them. They're going to be playing against Kansas. Start the season at the Youngster against Kansas, one of the most successful teams. Then they got to also host Kentucky, a battle of bluegrass, one of the biggest rivalries. And this is definitely a game I'm doing for the relevant of the rivalry, Louisville versus Kentucky. It's a one. And then of course they'll also be taking on Indiana. So they're going to go against IU, Kentucky, and Kansas. And we're also facing Arkansas too, with Calipari back in town. And Memphis and Tennessee. It's going to be a tough non-conference schedule. That's a very tough non-conference schedule. Big teams, and of course, in conference, Duke's good. Notre Dame's pretty solid. NC State, North Carolina are all pretty tough games. Interesting to see how U of L basketball does this year. I know it was great to see Pat Kelce take that program last year. That was, trust me, the Louisville basketball program needed that. Because I don't know if some of you guys don't realize, Louisville basketball has always been one of the most consistent, successful programs in the country, and Kenny Payne just nearly tanked the entire program. It's not been the same since Pitino left, even though Chris Mack did pretty good. Kenny Payne was absolutely horrible. Some of the worst Louisville teams ever. So, should be a game, of course. We're about to approach the island of Conradton very soon. So let's go ahead and talk about another part about Antigua and Barbuda. Let's go talk about the economy of the island for a bit, the island nation. Let's talk about its economy for a bit. So in terms of economically speaking, Antigua and Barbuda's economy is mainly service-based and it's dominated by tourism. It accounts for more than half of GDP of the nation is tourism. As a destination of the most affluent travelers, Antigua is most well known for its collection of five-star resorts. However, weaker tourism activity since the year 2000 has slowed the economy and put it in a tight fiscal issue. So nowadays, it's more enacted policies to bring in high net worth citizen residents, including abolishing income tax in 2016. A provision of investment banking financial service also is a big part of the economy, with major international financial institutions have offices here on the island. The nation, in terms of agriculture speaking, most of the agricultural production is towards the markets. It's done despite the fact of the limited water supply and shortage of laborers. Manufacturing is about 2% of GDP, but it's made for export, including bedding, handicrafts, and electronic components. Pretty interesting, though, too, as well. So, yeah, mainly tourism is a big deal, but there are some other parts of its economy that are definitely very important for Antigua. Let's look outside for a bit. If there's anyone else flying along with us if they wanted to choose to fly along. Yeah, really enjoyed my time here as well. So I hope you're all doing pretty good. This guy's Barbuda. Dead ahead of us is Barbuda. So, here we are, guys. We're about to get closer into our next stop. Yeah, we're doing pretty good. We're about to make our landing here. We're just 70 nautical miles from our last stop. We're doing pretty good. So in terms of our flight sim community stuff here this weekend, I know Murph's gonna be back later today. Two-Toe Murphy, by the way, let's give him a shout out for Murphy. He'll be back later today in Nepal in the Cessna 208. Yes, he'll be going through he's gonna do a trip around Nepal from Lukla. Should be absolutely gorgeous to do Nepal. Some very extreme fun, bridge chalk strips, remote valleys, dirt runways, and more. Tons of historic stuff in Nepal. Cool. Allison thankfully should be back on Saturday. She'll be doing another one of her historic flight recreations. One and only Allison Johnson. She'll be doing She'll be in Alaska. From Nome, she'll be going to McGrath in Anchorage, Alaska. So she'll be in Alaska. Should be a really cool flight in the Robinson R-44. Could be really great. Should be really great this weekend, of course. So yeah, thank you for the shout outs, Typhon. Really do appreciate it. Support's always fantastic. If you guys want to join my Discord, here's my Discord link. Really enjoyed my time flying here, of course. So, pretty big games as well. So we're about to reach Barbuda. Here very shortly. I would love to have my music back, but apparently I can't really do that here. Here it is, guys, Barbuda. So a little bit about the island itself. This island here, is mainly very well known for its salty ponds and scrubland throughout the island, and it's home to many different endemic species of birds, including its own warbler bird. It's endemic only to this island, the Barbuda warbler. You got one of the rarest snakes in the world, the Antigua racer. And the species of lizard Griswold's amoeba, found both islands, and it's home to other near-threatened bird species, including the West Indian whistling duck, the white-crowned pigeon, and a couple of other very important little animals here. Pretty cool stuff. But Codrington is where we're going to be making our first stop of the trip. First of our 2 stops is Codrington. So Codrington is the only village on the island. And it comes with the major division. Population 796 people. The country's most northernmost settlement. Of course, it was established back in 1605 by Christopher Codrington and his brother John. Actually, one of the country's oldest settlements, and is the 23rd largest settlement on the nation. Of course, being the only settlement here in the island, It's home to many specialized facilities like several different churches, post office, police station, daycare, preschool, primary school, and secondary school. Of course, at one point the town was completely damaged near by an earthquake in 1843, damaging the castle. Of course, this area was nearly completely devastated by Hurricane Irma back in 2017. Swept through the entire town. So they did have to rebuild a lot of this area, and it's currently being rebuilt. One very interesting thing about the island is it's home to the Caravana Festival that takes place every year in May, which includes a teenage pageant, Cabana Queen Show, Calypso competition, weekend beach parties. As a result. So, pretty cool stuff about this little island, of course. It's overlooked by a lot of people, but I thought this would be pretty neat too. Yeah, I do like this gyrocopter. It is a lot. It's like flying a chopper, but it feels like a plane. Perfect. Balloons. But yeah, according to my nav map, we might find the frigate birds sanctuary, home to several of the frigate birds. Um, these bad boys, these birds, by the way, these seabirds actually can soar for weeks on wind currents. They can soar for weeks. They mainly eat fish and squid, and they would catch them near the surface. They even rob other birds of seafood too. They can absolutely soar. Here it is. This is Barbuda. Here, Great Street Island. Here it is, guys. Our first stop's coming up here soon, right in front of us. Our first stop. That's the international airport that's actually built here. Or what was supposed to be built, but of course. Oh yeah, they just built a new international airport here just recently in 2024. They built a brand new one on the island. Look at this place. Pretty cool, huh? What a beautiful place. Here you can see the clear water and stuff. So of course, guys, we will be making the landing here very shortly. Of course, we'll start descending here. ahead and start lowering the power. We can finally start descending. Finally start descending here. Airport's down. Here it is, guys. Here it is, guys. Codrington. Is the main settlement on the island. Go. Here we are. And we talent. So here are our guys. We'll be sitting here for just about a minute or two. Our first stop here. I'll be taking a, um, I'll be taking a quick break. We'll be back in just a second. I just got to take a quick break. You just Hey everyone. Okay, I'm back. Hey Red Baron, good to see ya. We're here in Barbuda today. We're going to be making our way to the main island of Antigua very soon on the next leg. So let's go ahead and get back into the cockpit and start making our way over to Antigua. Second and last leg of the stream. Go ahead and let's go ahead and so let's go ahead and make our way over. We're just about 8 nautical miles from our last stop. Let's go ahead and make our way up onto Antigua. Let's go ahead and make our way there. So we're going to make our way over to Antigua. Going to go here. So let's go ahead and, as we make our way to Antigua, we're going to go ahead and talk about the rest of our slides here. So as we head over, we're going to talk about some of the slides. So our first slide we'll be covering here is the culture of the island. So Antigua's culture, some of that being its music and stuff. The main part about Antigua's culture has been the music. Mainly, it's a lot of influence with West African music. Even though it's dating back to Christopher Columbus's writings, when it was still home to native tribes, still there's very little research about the island done from the early music. The indigenous music of Antigua is known as Bena. Came to being after slavery was abolished, and it uses a call-response format, and it's interested in obscene gossip and rumors, and was widely used as a popular communication tool in the 20th century. However, nowadays it's been eclipsed by both calypso and soca, which is South Asian rhythm. In terms of the native arts, art of Antigua and Barbuda began with the local people that lived on the island. And their music grew with the Arawak people. They include pictographs and petroglyphs. These different shapes, animals, and plant artworks were said to be used for both ceremonial and religious purposes. And painting, sculpting, and ceramics were also among those traditions that European settlers brought into the islands. Local painters used European art forms to produce their own art in their own styles. And mainly, those include social issues, nature, and Caribbean identity as the main subjects of artwork. Of course, every year on the island of Antigua, people celebrate their freedom from slavery with the Antigua Carnival, modeled after the European pre-Lent Carnival. And over 13 days, there are brightly colored costumes, town events, beach pageants, and music. And it runs through from late July to Carnival Tuesday, the first Tuesday in August. And there are public holidays here on the islands. Of course, another festival here in Antigua is Sailing Week, which is a big week-long yacht regatta on the waters of the famed English harbor. Sailing Week was founded in 1967 and is one of the top yacht regattas in the world. The main festival on the island of Barbuda is Caravana, which we talked about a bit earlier. And there are 11 public holidays here in Antigua as well. So definitely something to keep an eye on while we're going into Antigua and Barbuda. So that is about the culture and such of the islands. This is Cocoa Point, easternmost part of Barbuda. We're now going to head. I'm going to this direction. head over to Antigua, which is right here. So that is the first part about the cultured stuff here. So, whoops. I did not mean to click that. Whoops. So we're going to continue here for 29 nautical miles until we reach to Cape Bay and Devil's Bridge. So we'll be visiting all that area. Our next part of Antigua we're going to mention is cuisine, of course. Cuisine will be our next discussion here. The cuisine of Antigua and Barbuda is mainly European origin with regional ingredients. The national dishes on the island is fungi, and pepper pot are the main national dishes. Fungi is a cornmeal-based dish that resembles polenta, which is very well known for Italian food. Other national foods include saltfish, which is cod, lobster from Barbuda, yucana, which is a sweet dumpling made of sweet potatoes and coconut, and rice, similar to that of pilau or arroz con pollo. Additionally, there are confections such as peanut brittle, sugar cake made of coconut and sugar, fudge, and raspberry, and tiramisu. Of course, a very popular delicacy is the black pineapple, prized for its juicy, and it's supposed to be the sweetest type of pineapple available. Also, another part of many people's breakfast is the Antigua Sundae bread, which is sold at bakery. Instead of made of butter, the bread is actually made of lard. Pretty funny to mention, yeah, imagine bread made of lard, not butter. So, and finally, the last place that we'll discuss about Antigua is sport. So, of course, the most popular sport in the islands is actually cricket, which was brought by the English, of course. One of the most well-known batsmen was Sir Isaac Vivian Alexander Richards. These were his different ranks, of course. Represented the West Indies cricket team between 1974 and 1991. And the national cricket team of Antigua and Barbuda represent the country in the Commonwealth Games. However, many Antiguan cricketers actually play for the Leeward Islands cricket team during domestic matches, and the West Indies cricket team internationally. Teams from various villages and parishes compete in its own league, by the way. The second most popular sport is associated football, or soccer, and it has its own national team that was founded in 1928. No worries, Red Baron. There's always something going on. There's not an issue. Its national team is currently ranked 162nd in the world. However, the highest this team was ever placed was in 2014 when it was 70th in the world. So, their best placement in the Caribbean Cup was in 1998 when they were runners-up. So, they're part of the CONCACAF, which is the North American soccer, North America. So, pretty juicy stuff. Of course, the most successful in CONCACAF, historically speaking, in the top ranking from the region is Mexico. Mexico and the United States are the top two in the men's. Top three are the big three North American teams: Mexico, U.S., and Canada. Whereas the women's, it's basically the U.S. on top, Canada second, and Mexico third. There you go. Are you gonna go to Madison Airshore Bowman Fest? Unfortunately, I'm gonna be gone during Bowman Fest, so no. I'm gonna be gone during Bowman Fest, sadly. Not this year, but thank you for asking. But no, I'm gonna be heading out of town there in that day. So no Bowman Fest for me. This is Antigua. Now this is the main island of the country. Is Antigua compared to Barbuda, which Barbuda is mainly flat. Antigua is much more mountainous and geographically diverse, thanks to the myriad natural points, capes, and beaches. Such. So this is Antigua. So we're going to be mainly going a few points. One of the major points of interest here we'll be visiting on the way is English Harbor. It is a natural harbor. This was very well known for in a major British naval base. Um, British Navy used this island a port. It's a safe natural port. And the most famous of all those, of course, is a place I've been to, Nelson's Dockyard. It still is the only continuing Georgian-era dockyard in the world. It was built in the 18th century, and of course, it was named after Horatio Nelson, who lived in the area for 3 years between 1784 to 1787. And it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Really cool place. I got to visit it. It is definitely a really neat place. Dockyard's really cool area. Now we're finally going to make the island up. Here we are, guys. We're about to reach Antigua very soon. So we're going to be flying around the island for a bit. So we're just 37 nautical miles from our last stop at the flight plan, so we're almost there. Thank you guys so much for being here this Friday, of course. I know we haven't had the music playing for a bit. I miss having that. But excited for it, though. Some of the excursions on the island I found, of course, the best of Antigua, which Shirley Heights, Go Hill, Nelson's Dockyard. They got a panoramic drive, a beach break, a walking towards St. John's, a fig tree drive and beach. Devil's Bridge is popular here. Kayaking, snorkeling. Quite really cool stuff here in Antigua. Doing Here we go, guys. Like I said, we're not going the fastest watching plane for today. We want to take something quick. And we're going to get you to the island. Here we are. So we have one last sled to cover. We'll just fly around the island for a bit. Then we'll make our way back. So it shouldn't be taking too much longer. Of course. This here on our is Devil's Bridge. It's national park here in Antigua. Here we go as well. Yeah. We're going to be heading to Devil's Bridge. Far around it. Here we are, guys. We finally made it to the island. Finally here. This is Devil's Bridge. here, guys. I mean, this is pretty cool. This is Dell's Bridge. It's known for a lot of the limestone formation stuff. The limestone arch has views of the ocean, of course. I'll get the posters put up pretty ready. I'm just gonna get ready to go over here as well. Yes, you can definitely see parts of this island are quite hilly, of course. Yes, there's some actually hilly parts of this island. Really cool place. Yeah, I've been to there last time in real life. Really neat place. Really cool. We're now getting the more hilly parts. Back from the distance, we can see the tallest point in Antigua. This is, in the map it says Mount Obama, but it's called Boggy Point. But the next one we're going to visit is, of course, English Harbor, where you can find Nelson's Dockyard, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, located right here. Here it is, guys, the English Harbor, the UNESCO World Heritage Site. This here is Shirley Heights, by the way, very popular way to take pictures of the harbor down below. And you get some of the absolutely beautiful screenshots of the island. Some of the most pretty stuff here. There is our English harbor. There's the UNESCO World Heritage. Pretty cool, huh? Definitely very neat. Here goes to the mountains. Really cool scenery here. Fly through the mountains, of course. Follow them off. So our last destination, our last stop here today, St. John's. St. John's. So St. John's is the capital and largest city in all of Antigua and Barbuda, and it's the capital. Population of 22,000 people. It is now the parish, which is much of the metropolitan area, and it was established in 1866. It has grown to become the biggest city. It became the main train port of the islands. Even though it's not necessarily a tourist destination, it primarily functions as the main economic center of the country, home to its own state college, and it is home to the National Library, many government agencies, and more. Pretty cool stuff here in Antigua. Definitely pretty neat, and it's home to a lot of different quite a few different landmarks. That is John's Antigua. Got the beautiful mountains and such ahead. We'll be landing at BC International, which is the main international gateway to Antigua, of course. This area's got some beautiful beach stuff. Also to our left, if you look to our left, that is the island of Montserrat. Much of the area down south is no longer inhabited much because of volcanoes, so most of all the settlements up north. And we might visit Montserrat or something around that area when we go to St. Kitts, I believe. Pretty cool stuff. So like I said, I hope you guys have a great weekend and enjoy your, well, here it is, guys. St. John's is coming up really shortly. Down ahead of us is St. John. We're going to be visiting St. John, and then we'll be making our way to the airport. That will wrap up today's stream once we get this. Yep, this is it. This is St. John's. That's St. John's. Now we're gonna. What? There's the cricket ground for cricket. Of course. Here we are. Here are your guys. Our last year. So that's it, everyone. We made it down to St. John's, everyone. Today's flight. This was a lot of fun, guys, and I appreciate each and every one of you who came by, stopped on the stream, and watched. on the trip. I hope you guys learned some really interesting things about Antigua and Barbuda. So we will be returning back to on stream on Sunday as we fly over to historic Yosemite National Park. Absolutely gem of a national park. We're going to say hello to MSFS official, and we're going to go ahead and get set up the right. Take care, everyone, and have a great start to your weekend. See you all soon. Goodbye, everyone.